Marta.
Sorry, that.
Good afternoon, Southern Institutions back again. It is Thursday, January 25th, and we have with us today a group of gentlemen from the Old First Congregational Church in Bennington. We have David Pilichowski, Ken Clark, and Wayne Cashman, and we also have Rep Morrissey here. The reason why these gentlemen got here is Senator Sears and Senator Campion had asked if they could come in and give us a presentation, and they're going to let us know what their ask might be. And I think we've reached the point of no return. So who would like to lead off? Can I just have you, when you start, just tell us who you are?
Sure. My name is Ken Clark. I serve as minister of the church in Bennington, the Old First Church. I've been there since 2009. And every place in Vermont has a pinpoint. If you go onto your MapQuest, it seems like every Vermont town has a white steeple in it. So that's our pinpoint, I think. And Bennington is a little different for a couple reasons. The first reason being that it's kind of the entranceway to the state of Vermont if you're coming from New York. And as such, I like to think of it as an everyday backdrop for us who go to church, and it has its own function. But for those entering the state, tourists and just others, it's as if you're beginning to enter a drama, a good drama. And it's like the stage is set. You have the church, you have the Bennington Monument, you have a wonderful cemetery that is outside the church, a white picket fence, and then this row of homes, which says to a lot of people, if it's their first trip to New England, and we have people from Europe, from Asia, from all over the world who come, it gives them a sense of this is a little bit of what we're about, not everything, but this is the backstory. This is the setting. This is where it takes place. And our church has done that since the 1760s, 1762. This building was built in 1805 and occupied in 1806. And from that, you understand that it's an old and somewhat needy building from time to time. And others here today, after I finish my 2 or 3 minutes, will tell you about some of those needs. I'm just trying to tell you about the people who take care of this state treasure. We're a congregation of about 100 people. We meet every week. Visitors come to the church and they ask the question like, do people still go to church here? And the answer is yes. We those 100 members spend money to upkeep the church in every year. In the past, it has been the cemetery as a place where there are 5 Vermont governors who are buried right outside our door. There's a lot of the early history, the Vermonters who died at the Battle of Bennington, the New Hampshire people who died at Bennington, the Brits and the Hessian soldiers, some of them, those that died, are buried right outside our church door. So it's a great place to begin that story of our history and our founding. In January, the date here specifically, January 6, 1791, when Vermont was still an independent republic, there was a convention called by the legislature. They met in Bennington at the old original meeting house, which is basically on our front doorstep, no longer exists, but is a wonderful town green. And there's a plaque showing that this is where the vote was taken for Vermont to enter the federal union. And that was January 10th, 1791. Characteristically, the vote was 105 to 2, because that's the way it is in Vermont.
Who were those 2 Democrats who voted no?
As I prepared this today, I was thinking, I really should go back. I know those 2 in mind. But suffice to say, a lot of history. Our first tourists can perhaps be said to be Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who in 1800 conducted a political campaign tour of the northern states, and they came through and stayed at the Walloomsac Inn, which still exists across the street from our church, the old tavern. So a lot of things have gone on this site. I'm just gonna leave you, I could give you pages.
How do you rank as far as in Vermont, as far as the oldest church? Are you close?
We're the oldest Protestant congregation.
Yeah.
If we say gathered, organized in the state of Vermont, such that, we were incorporated subsequently in the late 1800s, but we existed at the time the town was created. The way New Hampshire created towns in Vermont was, we'll give you the land, you build a church and a school, and, you can have it when you finish that job.
Have you been fairly successful as far as maintaining your numbers? I mean, 100, have you been probably higher than that at one time, lower than that?
You know, I would say we're about always the same. It's very odd. Congregations are generally older. It's a fact of life, and people worry that, they look around and they say, pretty soon we'll all be gone. And then in 30 years, there's another group of older people who look around and say, pretty soon we'll all be gone, and we never leave.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have some young people in our congregation. We fluctuate between that 100, but that 100 number has been I think a standard number over the years, not unusual.
Yeah.
The church can hold about 225. We had that many in for our Christmas Eve service.
Yeah.
So we reach out into the community, and that's the point I make here is that the church is the church, but it's also the setting of kind of a very unusual public space.
Yeah.
There aren't many there were many great spaces in Vermont, but this is a unusual historic space with the monument on one end, the church on the other, and then the string of colonial buildings. It just, even for our locals walking their dogs every day, the people who use it as public open space. It's a wonderful, soothing good space. And I wrote those words, and it's a sense of peace and place.
Yeah.
And it's peaceful. If you go in the church, like here, the architecture speaks to your spirit.
Mhm.
And when you go outside, there's that sense of peace and place. So very, very wonderful spot. And I just wanted to give you some of that introductory background about that.
Appreciate that very much.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you for your time. Oh, that's what wanted to start out by thanking you for your time.
No problem.
And also, we have been helped a lot by the Division of Historic Preservation in the past and funding, and the Agency of Conservation and Community Affairs, the Trust for Historic Preservation. So we've been generous, but people have been generous to us, but you'll hear more about further need as time comes. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Switch sheets for you.
Just introduce yourself, that's all we ask, and everybody will know who you are.
Dave Pilachowski. I've been a member of the church for 25 years. I'm the trustees right now. I also have the honor of being a member of the trustees of the Bennington Museum.
Yep.
And it's really those two organizations plus Ken mentioned this neighborhood. The museum is part of that, the cemetery, and we see the impact of tourism. We're the beneficiaries of Vermont tourism in that location. And that's something that I witness as somebody who volunteers in the research library at the museum. We'll get folks who email, walk in, text us, get on the phone. They're interested in their ancestors.
Yeah.
Folks families who settled in Vermont, and since that time have spread across the country. The church is really, in a way, a community church. Obviously, as Ken said, we have weekly services, but there's a lot more that happens there. We have a program called Open Church, which is a situation where members of our congregation, probably 50% of those folks and 50% of community people who are interested in history, whether it's the church, the cemetery right next door, which is Vermont's Sacred Acre, so designated by the legislature back in 1938, I think, 37 or 38. So you have this back and forth, and I also have been fortunate enough to be part of the open church program. So we have folks who come in looking for an ancestor. We have folks who come in who know nothing about Vermont history. As Ken mentioned, we have visitors, probably 8,000 to 10,000 a year for the open church program. They come from every state in the union. They come from overseas. Prior to COVID and starting up again, we're seeing the tourist buses. We see folks from Japan, from the European countries coming on a regular basis. Honestly, they're mostly here in the fall, which is not a surprise, but it's wonderful. And the enthusiasm. Then they have some basic questions, obviously history. More to the point, I'm hungry, where can I eat? Where can I stay? What else is there to see? Well, obviously the monument stands out, the museum. Robert Frost, who's buried in the cemetery, the Frost Stonehouse Museum, just north of there in Shaftesbury. So there's really a lot that we can do. It's a beautiful setting, and we're just fortunate enough to also be able to share it with weddings, funerals, concerts. Ken mentioned special holiday events, lessons and carols, candlelight service. Knock your socks off. I don't know if we've got any images of that, but it's really a privilege to be able to share the building. The building is historic, obviously, and has various structural needs, and Wayne will go into those. Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Wayne Patchmark, and I am the chair of the trustees.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and share my screen
No
here.
problem. If you have any problems, we can help.
Yeah, no, they've been, I think, pretty helpful so far. There it goes. It'll come up. Did it come?
No, not yet. It will,
It always does.
mostly.
Or did I hit the wrong button? True.
Linda can figure it out.
You go back.
Yeah, oh, wait a minute, that's just gonna run the thing here. Don't, it's on short presentation, so I can get it out. There we go.
Okay.
So I can take that down.
And then you want to share. Right, this.
Right, okay, okay.
So you click that. And then.
Okay,
There we go. There we go.
fantastic.
That's that
And
pretty
that's a
picture.
slideshow.
And then do the slideshow so we see it bigger.
Yep,
It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I had,
there we go. This is a front view of the church as it sits today. And what you're seeing here is the original building as it was built and added to in the 1830s. So it gives you a feel for what it looks like. And that's basically when you drive in Route 9, that's the image that you see. It's the first thing you see in Vermont. And this is a different view of it from the same point, but this is looking from a drone overhead. And as Dave just talked about, there's the cemetery with the graves from the Revolutionary War, and as well as Robert Frost and so forth.
Is that still an active cemetery?
Yes,
It is.
Yeah.
and isn't it at a bend in the road so that
Yes.
you approach and you see it and then you have to
turn, yeah.
Right, it's beautiful.
So you can see here that, and as we talk about it, the area on the top we refer to as the lantern above the bell.
Right up
Then there's the
here.
bell deck, and below that is the bell tower.
Okay.
And then you see the slate roof on the church that's there.
Mhm.
So this gives you an overview. When I talk about it, I'll use those three terms, and
Yeah.
rather than guessing where I'm referring to, it's easier to look at the picture.
Yeah.
And get a feel for it. Now, what we have done, this is not something where we suddenly started to work on it. We've been doing ongoing work. And part of this has been that the trustees, in order to provide the training for those who will be sitting in our seats 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, we've developed a trustee manual.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we developed is, we instituted a twice yearly physical inspection of the building with details of what to look for, how to go about it, so that those who are new trustees aren't guessing, or worse yet, saying, oh, it must not be important. So in this process, we have ongoing repairs. Typically, every year, the slate roof is about $20,000 to $30,000 of repairs. And some of the things we've done is during COVID, in order to come back to live services, we installed a life breath system, which exchanged the air. So we got rid of the dead air. People were basically able to come to a live service sooner.
Yep.
And safely.
Yep.
And that system continues to operate today. And it also makes the air inside, fresh air from outside. It continuously exchanges 50% of the air and recovers about 90% of the heat.
Yeah.
In the wintertime. In the summer, because it draws the air down low, it actually cools the church without air conditioning. So it's an energy efficient system.
Nice.
So that's a plus all the way around. And that was not a small test, because it had to be put in without disturbing any of the historic components of the church.
Right.
So it is in the basement, not attached to the church, but on platforms on the ground underneath the church.
Yeah.
We continually repair the exterior wood deterioration. This is an ongoing battle. And that has more to do with paint and the changes in paint. As I'm sure, as you may know, paints now have a lot of the heavy metals removed from them. Their lifetime for protection of exterior structures has been reduced significantly. So in addition to everything else, we have to paint more often. We've also, in order to not worry about a freeze up or anything else, replaced our heating plant about 3 years ago. Now, that again, it's a 40-year-old heating plant we're replacing, and it's not because it wasn't working, it was because it was old, it was questionable. It was time to put a safe heating plant. We do not want frozen pipes and water damage in this building.
Right.
Everything we're doing as we go forward, we're aiming towards whatever repair we do should last for 100 years. So we're thinking in that 100-year mark, because it is a historic building.
Yep. So
we think a little different. We refinished the original Narthex floor. This is a floor that has boards that were hand cut that are 14, 16 inches wide. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was covered by carpets in the 30s, and that's what was there until we finished it. And now it's back to the original. So when you walk in, it's like the people who walked in there 200 years ago. I think that's a nice touch when you walk in that door. We found that we had problems. We noticed the weather vane, instead of being like this, was so we had to remove and seal the opening, because the hole, which should have been 4 inches, was closer to 17 inches. So we were getting water in. That's where a lot of the damage has been coming from. And of course, it's a little hard to get up there. You're talking about 110 feet in the air. So that was part of what we had. This yearly inspection system allowed us to start catching all of these earlier. And as a result of that, we put together structural and physical evaluation of the structure by outside experts. We brought a local structural engineer, John Novelli of Novelli Engineering, in to look at the structure of the tower and the narthex and the lantern. He made some suggestions for temporary repair, but long-term repair. And then working with the State Historic Preservation Trust, we were able to bring in Jan Lewandowski, who is an expert, probably I guess the last steeplejack in Vermont.
Yeah.
And he's been down, and he is scheduled this summer to take the lantern and crab, the top portion of that, off and rebuild it. And we are coordinating between him and our local historic preservation builder. So they've already been meeting and discussing which portions they're going to work on. So we want to, again, part of this is to make sure that contractors are coordinated, working together, working smart.
Yep. Yes, go ahead.
So Wayne, if I could just,
Sure.
do you know what the original heating system was? Was it just wood stoves?
It was wood and then coal. In fact, the present bathroom, which is really a closet, was originally the coal bunker.
No kidding.
I have crawled through the opening to get into it underneath it when we had to do some maintenance. And it is creepy, but it was originally a coal bunker. There was coal stoves that were in the basement that would heat up through the floor.
Yep.
And that floor heating system is still in place today with blowers in the basement that blow warmed air from heat exchangers from the furnace plant through those same openings.
Yep.
So we've kept as much as we can intact. And this is the picture of some work that was done a few years ago, where a corner of the roof from the damage from the slate tiles caused the corner to deteriorate. We had to pull it apart and redo significant repairs on the roof. What was happening, and what we found out from roof experts from Vermont Roofing, is that the original roof under there was a cedar shake roof. Somewhere in the 1800s, they put slate over the cedar shakes.
Yeah.
The problem is the cedar shakes deteriorated. The nails were really good. They're still there.
Yeah.
So every time we get a snow load, it pushes down on the tile and it breaks some of the
Yeah.
slate tiles.
Yeah.
So, and each year it's getting worse and worse. It's
Yeah.
time to replace it.
Wow.
So one of the things we found is when we were gonna do this, we brought in a historical architect, I don't know if Jane Radakia, who teaches historical architecture, very familiar with the building, is somewhat invested and is helping us with the renovation. She's worked with Jan Lewandowski also. And the goal is that they researched the system and where the original slate came from, which is Pulteney, I think. Pulteney, Vermont. And that's where we're gonna get the new slate from.
Yeah.
But the concern is that we're going to have to leave the original structure of the roof intact. So in order to do that, we're looking at this system which Fontaine Roofing puts on and has put on many structural and historical buildings in Vermont that they've already gone and inspected with a 100-year warranty, using about 40% less weight of slate.
Yeah.
Which, considering the fact that we do not want to disturb any of the original structure underneath the roof, we want to make it intact, we want to preserve it so that in a future date, someone can come and actually see that. It'll be covered with CDX plywood. And then this slate with a high density, high molecular weight polyethylene, high carbon content layer underneath, like an ice shield,
Yeah.
will act as a UV stabilizer. But we're basically removing all the old nails, all the old hardware, and all the new hardware will be stainless steel.
Yeah.
So and the company that produces it guarantees and provides a written 100-year warranty.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bold.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, that was the first question. Both Jane and myself, I'm an engineer. We
Yeah.
asked a lot of questions about this design. We spent a lot of time with their engineering people who gave us very solid answers.
That's great.
So we've done our homework.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like it, yeah.
yeah, you have to. This is something that's irreplaceable. We can't make it again.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure we do it the right way.
Yeah.
So this is one of the shots. One of the things we did is we removed the, as I said, the weather vane. And if you look at that weather vane, the interesting part is there's a guy hanging on that crane cable who's undoing it. So he and that 500-pound weather vane are on the cable. And this was done, by the way, that's talking about community connections. Greater Heights, who's a tree service, provided the cranes, the people, and the service gratis to us. Would they ever actually go to a service at our church? I don't think so. But it's their church because it's their community.
Give them a free wedding.
I think we probably would, but that saved us easily $10,000.
Yeah, that's
And that's-
wonderful.
But that's a huge, that weather vane is 27 feet long, weighs over 500 pounds. And then the center portion is actually a reproduction that was done either in the 90s or in the 30s. I'm not sure when the museum got the original double comet piece of it. But the vertical forged steel vertical part is the original one from the 1830s. So,
Can you go back and show that first picture that you had, just because I don't remember the
The middle
weather vane,
piece.
I wasn't looking at
okay,
it.
uh,
Underneath the
second one?
lantern.
Yeah.
Yeah,
see if I can do that. Yeah, there we go. Previous. Okay, I'm a little slower than this.
That's fine.
There's the weather vane. This is an older picture. You can see the weather vane right up here.
Yeah.
At the top.
okay.
This is hard to see.
Yeah,
Wow,
That's
wow.
hard to say.
It's obviously really.
and that's when it
hot.
was intact.
Okay,
And since then, that ball you see at the top could have been 2 to 3 feet over to one side.
So
There's
that
a,
ball that's on the red,
there's a
Yeah.
black ball and then there are two,
by the red shirt.
there are two comets
Yeah,
and then the tail. It's
Wow.
very hard to make out, but,
And how did they put that up without those cranes too?
at the time, they built scaffolds all the way around it.
Okay, interesting.
But the concern we have with that was the damage it was doing. Had we not done something last year, last fall, not fall 23, but fall 22, when we've had those big windstorms, we might have lost the whole top of that tower. So we basically, like an insurance company said, you stop the damage first.
Yeah.
The other thing we found is that the columns that hold the tower up, two of them were rotted, even though they were put in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Wow. So we are gonna be replacing those. And that's part of what Jan Lewandowski went through and looked at. He is working with Preston Niles from Bennington Builders as to how they're gonna coordinate the two parts of the project. But I've gotten them to meet a couple of times. Unfortunately, our meetings have actually been in the lantern.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah, it's a little scary pulling up that ladder up in there.
Yeah.
But that's where we've gotten, because that's where the needs are, and there are large slide sets of pictures from inside there, which are pretty scary.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're great for Halloween. But to give you some idea, it looks pretty on the outside, but there is tremendous damage from many years. In the 1990 replacement of the columns,